Good morning and welcome, and thank you for attending this awesome presentation as we continue our cloud-based platform discussions. This presentation is titled Cloud 101. Take your ArcGIS to the cloud, and our speakers today are Steve Mulberry and Wendy Peloquin from GISinc, incidentally, which was my very first GIS job back in the early 90s. So Wendy Peloquin, GISP, is an account executive with GISinc. She earned her Bachelor of Science in Geography and a certificate of GIS from the University of Georgia, go Dogs, and a master's degree in GIS administration from the University of West Florida. Wendy is an active member on the board of directors for URISA International. Steve Mulberry currently serves as a senior enterprise architect and sales engineer at GISinc. He has 28 years of experience creating and architecting enterprise systems. He started his GIS career in the United States Marine Corps. Hoorah! Photographer and terrain analyst. Since finishing his commitment, Steve has been employed by both state and local governments, as well as the private GIS consulting firms, such as Esri, where he spent 11 years as a solution engineer. And so if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box. We'll get to them at the end of the presentation. Also, for continuing education credit, make sure your name is correct on the Zoom login. And this session is being recorded and will be available on the conference website after this event. So thank you very much and enjoy the show.
All right, thank you so much, Sam, for the introduction. And thanks for letting us come present today. Wendy and I want to share some ideas and strategies on taking ArcGIS to the cloud. We know that this year has been unique, right, to say the least, and we at GISinc have seen an increase in organizations looking to the cloud for providing additional services for things like supporting remote workforces and providing a wider access to their web GIS. And so why listen to GISinc, and specifically why listen to me, right? Sam gave you that wonderful intro there, but we at GISinc have been aligned with Esri and the ArcGIS platform for over 29 years now. We have around 130 passionate professionals with one core purpose, and that's to help our customers fully leverage their GIS investment to gain that better insight in and through using location-based technology. And we've been deploying ArcGIS Enterprise on both on-premise and in the cloud for over a decade now, and we are also the first actual platinum business partner to become ArcGIS Cloud Services Specialty Designation. Esri requires its business partners to become this specialty designated in certain categories, and we hold several of those, and we're proud to be cloud services specialty ready so that we can help you guys implement this technology. So, when I started at GISinc back in 2009, I deployed our first cloud solution using Amazon Web Services for a health agency. And since then, you can kind of see the trend here, what we've been experiencing with organizations moving to the cloud. And as I mentioned, this year being unique, and even with the COVID pandemic, or because of it, right, we're seeing even more activity in this space. 2020 has really introduced this concept of using platform as a service, or software as a service, or solutions as a service to organizations, and people are really starting to understand that this can be done. We can have a remote workforce and leverage cloud services. We can put ArcGIS out in the cloud. We can put desktop out in the cloud and have a very successful implementation of our enterprise GIS and leverage cloud services. And this is really, we're kind of seeing this in the industry as well. And so here, I wanted to show you a couple of charts. These are done by RightScale, and they produced this State of the Cloud report. And this is showing us the comparison between 2018 and 2019 of those who are publicly adopting the cloud and the cloud services. And as we would suspect, Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure are up there leading the pack here, right, with people who are adopting cloud services. But we see other organizations out there, Google Cloud and some other ones. And what's interesting is if you take this report and compare it to 2016, 2017, you can see the numbers there, right? Microsoft is definitely increased its footprint. But across the board, more and more folks are starting to adopt cloud services. Now, what I get out of this, of these charts here, are that the more we see cloud offerings through these different providers out there, the better it is for us, because the prices drop, right? They battle against each other for providing the best services for the least amount of subscription costs, and so we benefit from that, and we can leverage those services, and so this is a good thing for us. So what does the cloud offer, right? And we have there's different perspectives out there on what the cloud offers and how it offers it and how we can leverage it, but I wanted to talk about a few here. First off are the capabilities. So basically, the cloud offers not only the traditional legacy type of data center services, like standing up virtual environments, providing internet capabilities, providing the power, those kinds of things, but it also introduces native cloud services, things like load balancing or serverless computing, or this concept of elastic storage or services. Security will be another big one in here that we talk about, but those automatic updates to those. So it takes what we have done traditionally in our on-premise data centers and extends that dramatically to provide not only the traditional services, but additional ones as well. Performance. So we have the opportunity to leverage and optimize infrastructures that are in the cloud through their scalability offerings. A term like elasticity allows us to use these computing and serverless computing environments, this elastic storage, and grow and shrink as needed based on our requirements and our need for processing power and storage capacity and things like that. Redundancy, reliability, those kinds of things are built right into a lot of the cloud service offerings, so we don't have to worry about that. Things like load balancing and content delivery mechanisms and things like that. Right? We don't have to worry about those because the cloud takes care of that for us. And cost, and this is probably one of the biggest ones that gets people excited about using the cloud. What the cloud offers is because we get to trade out our capital expenditures for our hardware and replace that with a variable cost or a variable expense. Right, when I worked, and I've worked in state and local government and federal governments throughout my life, and we always had this sort of hardware refresh cycle. Maybe every 3 years, every 5 years, we would go out and buy some new hardware to support our growth and our need. Well, no longer do you have to have that capital expenditure and plan for that, because you pay for what you use when you use it. So pay as you go type of thing, and you get an economy of scale. So the more you use, the less you pay. It's a really nice offering there. And then security and compliance. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but there's this shared model that we got to sort of understand when we start moving to the cloud. Cloud providers are responsible for security of the cloud, right? Access to their data centers, the power consumption, the network, things like that. But we still maintain security in the cloud. We still have that responsibility, and rightly so. So we can secure who has access, when they have access, what information they have access to. So we have this shared security model, and with these capacities and performance and cost, security compliance, it really makes a nice platform for leveraging services in a sort of a virtual data center environment. So when should you use the cloud? When should you start thinking about using the cloud? Well, maybe your organization is thinking cloud first, and your discussions around there are how can we leverage the cloud as we start to think about procuring hardware or services or platforms and software. Or maybe you've heard that the cloud is cheap and secure and elastic and resilient and simple and all those buzzwords out there. And yes, that's true. You can maintain a level of elasticity and cost savings, but just like anything else, right, if it's poorly configured or poorly architected or poorly administered, it can be pretty expensive to use the cloud. So you got to be careful how you look to the cloud for those kinds of of offerings and services. And maybe you have a large amount of data or processing needs like imagery or IoT, and you're processing large amounts of information. Or maybe you want to integrate into other cloud-based business systems like AI or IoT or other services and systems that are out there that you use, like work order management systems are moving to the cloud, business operation systems, HR, those kinds of things. Maybe you just need an offsite backup. And this is where a lot of people begin their entry point into the cloud, is just by setting up an offsite backup for their information and data. Maybe your IT is reluctant to change. I know maybe this is sort of a hard word there, but maybe your IT department is so busy doing their day-to-day workload, managing that workload and managing the other things that they have to do within your organization, your city, your county, whatever. They just can't keep up with your hardware or your updates to your software and things like that. Maybe you need access to that modern hardware or scalable systems and network. The cloud offers that capability. Maybe you only want to pay for what you use, right? Instead of having to buy this massive hardware collection and only use it maybe once a year, because maybe you're caching services and you get new imagery once every 3 years, right? So you have this massive amount of hardware sitting there waiting to be used, but it's not, right? So maybe you get full leverage out of it, pay for what you use and only use what you pay for. Maybe your organization's been breached, and this is always a big topic when we talk about security. And so I want to spend just a few moments here talking about cloud security. Is it a myth or reality? And I think I want to introduce sort of 4 features that I hope will help demonstrate why fear of the cloud is more of a myth than it is a reality. And that first one is strong perimeters and surveillance. So I've had the pleasure of visiting a couple of these data centers in my past, and it's just incredible the precautions that they put in place there with high fences and barbed wire and concrete barriers and guards that patrol and cameras and security, all that very highly secure and obscure data centers. You wouldn't even know they exist in your neighborhood because they're not advertised. They're usually hidden by trees or berms or things like that. They have redundant electrical trunks coming in, a very high and strong security for their perimeters and surveillance there. Controlled access. So when we're talking about employees or vendors or visitors, they're all physically separated from any one company's mission critical information and data services and applications. Very controlled environment. When I went in to visit one of these, I had to get checked in by the guard. I had to show my credentials. I had a background check. I had to go through one gate, and then you do a retinal scan and a thumbprint, and then get de-electrotized there. It's just incredible the amount of security and controlled access they have to these facilities. And then, rightly so, they have to have on staff and access to the best, not only the best data centers, but also these highly skilled IT professionals that go through cybersecurity audits on a regular basis. They're experts in their field. And they are constantly looking for breaches and looking for ways to handle security. And these data centers go through these frequent auditing capabilities. Now, I've been in this business for almost 30 years doing and working in data centers, and I literally have been in data centers that look like this. In fact, I was in one that had a fan that propped open the front door to help keep it cool. And I've heard horror stories. I've heard one story where the data center was right underneath the second floor where a bathroom was. A pipe leaked, broke, and leaking, and started dripping water down into the data center. So there's so many great opportunities to leverage cloud providers because they provide this strong perimeters, controlled access, cybersecurity experts, and they go through this frequent auditing to make sure they stay in compliance and keep breaches down to a minimum. Also, I think it's really important to understand that these cloud providers offer these sort of security offerings where they help enable you, the organization, to focus on your mission critical activity, which then reduces and minimizes the distraction of building and managing in-house data centers or in-house IT solutions. And both Azure and Microsoft offer these respectively. Azure calls theirs the government cloud and or government DoD. Amazon Web Services calls theirs GovCloud. They provide these FedRAMP configuration environments or FSMA or HIPAA or whatever you need to provide the right level of security. Remember, the cloud providers are responsible for security of the cloud, and we as users are responsible for security in the cloud, and we still control and maintain and manage that. So how do you get started? Let me walk through a couple ideas here. So preparation first requires taking those right kind of steps. And I think the first one there is to evaluate, well, what are you trying to achieve? Are you going to migrate your entire GIS over? Are you going to do a hybrid approach? Do you want to leverage some on-prem, some cloud, and some ArcGIS online, right? Which is a cloud-based offering, software as a service, and also a platform as a service. I think it's very important to document what you're trying to achieve there and not go overboard where you want to write a 50-page document, but we want to make sure that we document exactly what we're trying to do and how that's going to look and behave and how that's going to affect our organization. And then talk to the experts when it comes time to architect out a solution. This is key because although there are some great opportunities to leverage pay-as-you-go models and additional security and additional native-based services that cloud offers, it can get complicated in some cases, and you can overdo it, and then you just kind of ruin the whole purpose of going to the cloud. So talk to the experts when you go there, and educate. So as you go across this platform, as you're evaluating and documenting and building this architecture out, educate your organization. Get people excited about this new opportunity. Get people ready to use it when the time comes. Share with them your dream, right? Get people on board with you. And then when it comes time to do the deployment, use the best practices and the patterns that are placed out there. And then one thing I think is real important here that we got to talk about is migrating. So when we think about content, when we think about what needs to be migrated, there's buzzwords out there like rehosting or refactoring or re-architecting, rebuilding. But this is where we feel that most people make the biggest mistake and or the risk is there to make mistakes. And so I want to focus on this just for a second. So when you think about migrating content, so there's this mindset of say, all right, let's take our systems out and our software out there. We can put ArcGIS Enterprise out in the cloud all day and any day, right? That's not hard. What's challenging is migrating the content, the years of applications and services and data that you guys have been collecting and maintaining and working with. You know, what does that look like in the cloud? So the things to think about are your deployment environments. Do you have a production stage, test, and development? And do those things and those environments need to move to the cloud? How are you handling authentication? Are you using built-in or Active Directory or some other kind of authentication mechanisms? Databases, how many do you have? What's the format? Can I just take a backup and recovery and move that over to the cloud? Or do I have to use some other service to migrate my information that's on premise up to the cloud? Do I have any automations, right, or scripts that do data processing or data engineering that would be affected if I move information to the cloud? And one of the biggest areas I think people overlook is where does desktop sit now? Where do my desktop editors go? What happens to ArcMap or ArcGIS Pro? How do I rebuild or reconstruct those projects from what we had on premise, right, our file structure, accessing these project files? How do I reconstruct those or rebuild those and get those out to the cloud so I can continue using those just as I did on premise, right? And the big question is, where does my desktop sit? And we're going to talk about that specifically here in a second. And then don't forget your services, right? Do you have hosted services? Do you have map services, GeoEvent services, image services, all those different services that you are providing through the platform to your organization? Republishing those, getting those moved out to the cloud, your web maps and your web applications, all those would have to move. And also business systems, what other business systems could break or would break if you move the GIS to the cloud or portions of the GIS to the cloud, things like CityWorks or other third-party work order management systems or HR or you know, any other system that the GIS helps to support. How does that get affected by moving to the cloud? And is there a need to make sure those connectivities go back and forth, right? How is that affected? So keep these things in mind as you're preparing to move or migrate to the cloud, especially when it comes to content. And take your time. This is where the documentation really becomes critical, so you make sure you understand you don't miss things that need to be moved that could break, right? So let me show you a quick little example. This is using Amazon Web Services architecture to sort of outline what a typical deployment would look like for ArcGIS Enterprise in a production, an active production, and a passive production world. Because if you didn't know this, your licensing for ArcGIS Enterprise gives you an active and a passive access, so you can have both environments up and running and use them as needed to have sort of create this redundant environment or highly available environment. And basically, we like to set up several levels of security, right? This virtual private cloud that holds our public and private subnets. We like to separate out our web adapter with the other components, the portal, ArcGIS server, and the data store out there. We like to manage all traffic coming in via the gateway, the load balancer, and this thing called a NAT, a network address translator. And this is sort of our basic approach to implementing ArcGIS Enterprise in the cloud. And we understand that there's some nuances and there's some things that we have to consider. Where does the enterprise geodatabase sit? And the big one is, where does my desktop go, right? Where does my desktop sit? So all cloud providers offer different solutions for moving desktop to the cloud. Because one of the big things that we always recommend is do not ever separate out your client from the data, right? Your client being ArcMap or ArcGIS Pro, and the data being the enterprise geodatabase, right? Those file geodatabases, whatever you're using as your data. And so you want to keep those two things on the same network backbone. And cloud providers offer virtual machines, right? Traditional remote desktop into a virtual machine and fire up ArcMap or ArcGIS Pro. But folks like Amazon Web Services offer a service like a workspaces services, where you can set up a workspace in the cloud environment and access your desktop tools that way. Or they've introduced this thing called AppStream. You can see an image off to the right where you actually set up a web-based entry point into applications. And you can remote access through a thin client like a web browser and access and run ArcGIS Pro in that space. And you can build these desktop services to specs, right? Maybe you're doing 3D analysis or image processing, or maybe you're using Pro or ArcMap, or maybe you're building caching. So you can build out this environment to specs, and you can have it when you need it. So maybe today I'm doing some image processing, so I need a little bit more cores or RAM. Or maybe I'm doing 3D processing next week, and so I need to make sure I have a lot of GPU in there for rendering information. Or maybe I just need a lot of CPU and RAM because I'm going to do some caching real quick and then I'm going to turn it off. That's the power and benefit of cloud services, is very quickly standing up and provisioning these and using them on demand as you need them. And I want to kind of show you this real quick, what this looks like. You saw a little graphic there on the right, the PowerPoint, but let me bring over this, my web browser. Hopefully you guys can see this. This is my web browser. I'm using Firefox, and you can see in my web browser, I'm accessing AppStream services, and this is ArcGIS Pro running inside of a web browser. And I can interact with this. I can go to a bookmark, zoom in, zoom out. I can identify a feature. It brings up the information here. I can jump to another bookmark. I can start editing if I wanted to. I can start creating new information. I can interact and work with the information just as if it was sitting on my desktop. But the service is running in the cloud, so the hardware and the accessibility. So I can have a really thin client. I can have a laptop running on a MiFi or my home wireless environment and access and use desktop in the cloud when needed. And when COVID hit, we had customers coming to us and saying, "Hey, I now have to work from home. How do I get access to my desktop?" Well, there's these processes are out there and available to you: AppStream, workspaces, virtual environments, and you can have a very efficient and effective experience using desktop in the cloud. So don't forget that when you start to think about moving to the cloud, make sure you don't forget about your desktop, where that sits and why that's important. Also, talking about ArcGIS monitoring. So whenever you start and you should be monitoring your ArcGIS Enterprise platform no matter where it sits, right? On premise or in the cloud, to make sure that it's healthy, make sure your services are running, make sure the applications that are using these services are efficient and performant, and the users, your end users, are getting a great experience for that. And so if and when you move to the cloud providers by default offer some basic monitoring capabilities: CPU, RAM, storage, read and writes on the disk drives, bandwidth consumption, those kinds of things you can leverage right out of the box. We at GISinc have been building some very lightweight Python scripts that help us look at specific things and collect that information, and then use the dashboard, the ArcGIS dashboard, and then display that information. So we have a lot of clients that have used these lightweight scripts to just give them a view into what their systems look like, right? What the CPUs look like, what are the storage, what are the services, the RAM, things like that. Esri also provides a tool called ArcGIS Monitor. It's a very sophisticated solution that allows you to basically implement monitoring and alerting throughout your entire ArcGIS enterprise, meaning the systems, the software, a SQL Server, ArcGIS Server, portal, those kinds of things, and it gives you this nice dashboard approach, and you can kind of see and view the activities that are taking place, and you can create these warnings and alerts based on information. So there's cloud provider based services that you can use. We have some lightweight Python scripts, and then Esri's ArcGIS Monitor. But recently, we've found this tool called PRTG. It's a third-party tool that allows us to get sort of the best of both worlds there. It's a lightweight tool, and it basically comes as sort of an open entry point into monitoring your environment. So some folks may use this. You get 100 connections free, and with those 100 connections, you can see here in the screenshots, you can monitor your production database environment, your dev environments, your servers, your image servers, your GeoVent, your GIS servers, your portals, and you get sort of that same look and feel into looking at all the components that make up your enterprise: CPU, memory, storage, bandwidth, but you can also tie directly into services as well and make sure your services are active, they're live, and they're actually returning something there. So don't forget to set up some good monitoring. Whatever you use, make sure you set up some good monitoring capabilities and alerting capabilities, so you're alerted ahead of time when things are starting to go awry, so you can fix those and keep things up and running. Because once you start pushing things to the cloud, and once you start making things available over the internet and things like that, then everybody wants, you know, this very, very efficient and performant experience, right? So we want to make sure that we can monitor and keep our environment healthy. So, all right, let me kind of go through the real quick summarize. Don't fear the cloud. There's so many wonderful opportunities that you can leverage that the cloud offers. The capabilities, right? The extended capabilities beyond the traditional data center side. The ability to have very highly performant and scalable solutions, having that elastic or elasticity approach to your computing power, your storage, your bandwidth. We've seen folks use the cloud just to help handle events. Maybe, you know, we're in hurricane season, so providing real-time information and access to services to help with that event or whatever event it may be. We've seen a lot of dashboards come out since COVID hit, right, and providing fast and reliable access to those things. Cost, pay as you go and pay for only what you use. It's simple, right? And economy of scale is the more you use, the less you pay. And security, I just, you know, being in this field for so long, there's just no way that you can argue with me that you can create a more secure data center on premise than what's in the cloud. And I'd love to have that discussion with you. So don't fear the cloud. There's some great opportunities there for you to leverage and work with. And ArcGIS Enterprise is already cloud ready. It's even to some extent cloud optimized. And we know that Esri is working on some very nice native cloud service offerings that we can leverage. So things like analytics for IoT is cloud native. ArcGIS Online is cloud native environment. So they're really leveraging the cloud services that provide that scalability there. Let me do a quick shout out here to a webinar I did. It's an hour long. It goes into much more detail about migrating and managed services in the cloud, focusing on ArcGIS Enterprise. So if you have some time, take a look at that. And I want to thank you so much for joining. And if there's any questions or comments or things like that, I'd love to take them now.
All right, Stephen, thank you so much. Great presentation, a lot of good information there. And looking in the chat right now, there are no questions at the moment. I know we'll have a poll, excuse me, a poll that we'll send out at the very end. We'll just give it maybe a few more seconds here to see if anybody has a question. Oh, here we go. Got one coming in. Oh, great presentation from Josh Norwood. Sharing the love. Josh, I love it.
Yeah, and there's that URL.
Very cool stuff from Garrett. Brett Spivey, have you been able to successfully scale out and scale in automatically?
Great question. And there is some challenges to that. And yes, certain components of ArcGIS Enterprise scale very nicely, but not all of them do. And I'll leave it at that. And so if you want to talk more, please reach out.
Cool. Also from Catherine Clifton, is Esri ArcGIS Monitor only available for cloud-hosted solutions, or can it also be applied to on-premise implementations?
On-premise as well, both on any environment. Yep.
Bradley Stripmatter, I hope I said that right. What's the average monthly cost for standard cloud deployment? That's a trick question right there.
Yeah, and I think what you're referring to here are the cloud costs. And so what's nice about ArcGIS Enterprise is depending on your capacity needs, it could be deployed on one server or multiple servers. And so you can get as low as a couple $100 a month to host ArcGIS Enterprise, but it can also go up to 1,000 or more a month. It all depends on how many computing resources you need, the storage and things like that. But we have clients that are running this in just less than $500 a month.
Fantastic. It looks like it's all the questions. Looked like you had about 125 participants at its peak, which is a great turnout. So, oh, we do have one more. Does Monitor reach into the geodatabase monitoring area, or just the GIS web services and web server infrastructure?
The infrastructure only. The infrastructure only. So the services, but it does reach into the database, so you can monitor the database activity, the reads and writes, and the triggers and events and things like that. So you can get some database level activity.
A great question from Robert Cushman. Do you have any suggestions for local governments and how they present a budget just once a year to estimate costs for their budget presentations?
Yes, and so most cloud providers have what they call a cloud calculator, and we've helped our customers come up with cost estimations and estimates monthly, yearly, and beyond. And most cloud providers like Microsoft and Azure offer this economy of scale. So if you provision for a year or 2 years or 3 years, then the price goes down per month. And so you can get a really good estimate monthly and yearly to help with your budget planning.
Good information. It looks like it might be the end of the questions. Thank you very much. Here's the poll. Everybody, please take it before you leave. And thank you, Wendy and Stephen, for awesome presentation. Looking forward to seeing you guys more in the future. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Sam.